The elevation gain from this direction is 1,617 metres over the course of 22.8 kilometres. That gives an average gradient of 7.6% and there's a maximum of 10.7. But as we all know, the statistics never tell the full story, so let's go and see what this Giant of Provence really has to offer. ...2013 will be the 9th time that the Mont Ventoux has featured as a summit finish, but on a further 6 occasions the race passed over it, and the first of those was back in 1951. There's a couple of different scenarios in terms of the way that this stage might pan out on the day. If that early breakaway has got enough time, it'll be those guys fighting it out for the stage victory. However, they've only got a few minutes. It's probably going to be a big hill climb race between the GC contenders. Either way, these lower slopes aren't particularly steep, so we won't see much attacking here. There's also a long way to go to the top. This climb does give you a little bit of a chance to get into your rhythm. First 3 Ks of it, a little more than a full flat, just 2% average gradient. The following 4 kilometres, they ramp up to 4%. And after that 7 kilometre mark, fun really begins. It ramps up to 10%, it stays like that for a further 9 kilometres through these trees.
The climb starts with a relatively long drag through the valley that feels longer than it looks on the profile. After passing through Le Brun, you reach the forest area and some steep corners. On your right is a barrier that distinguishes this climb and guides you upwards.
The last time the Mont Ventoux was used in the Tour de France was in 2009, when Juan Manuel Garati won the stage and Alberto Contador sealed his grip on that yellow jersey. There's been some really famous winners up here, including Charlie Gould, Raymond Poulidor, Bernard Thévenet, Eddie Merckx and Marco Pantani. And also the unlikely figure of Eros Polly, 86 kilograms and 1.94 m, crested first en route to his stage victory back in 1994. Just after the 7 kilometres to go sign, the road and the gradient just slacken off slightly as you head towards the Chalet Reynard, one of the key landmarks in your climb to the top of the Ventoux. The pros will have all the fuel they need on board by this point as they start the most important part of their day, the final surge to the finish line. But for us amateurs, it's a great opportunity to take on some last fluids or maybe a last gel.
At the 6 kilometre mark, if you've done your research or watched the pros, this is when the landscape will start to look familiar, with the iconic Ventoux yellow and black markers lining the left-hand side of the road and the barren stone landscape rather than forested scenes.
Well, not long after the 6K to go sign, as you can see, the side of the road starts to look very barren indeed. It's not too bad for me today because the temperatures aren't too high. You can imagine on some of the really hot days in July and August, this can be really excruciating. Weather conditions do play a crucial role when you're coming up to the top of the Ventoux, even for professional riders, and particularly on the last section, which is so exposed to the wind. The highest recorded wind speed at the top is 320 kilometers per hour, but on 240 days of the year, there are gusts of over 90. If you happen to be riding up here on one of those 240 days, it's pretty wise not to use these deep section wheels like I've got on. And if it's possible, ride up with somebody else, and even better, ride up with a group that's willing to stick together all the way to the top. Also bear in mind that the right clothing is essential, not just for on the way up, but of course many of you will have to ride down as well, and that will be a lot colder. Tom Simpson tragically died on this climb whilst riding the 1967 Tour de France. He was severely dehydrated, which had been brought on by a number of different factors. He was the first Brit ever to wear the yellow jersey, be world champion or win a classic. And when you see his monument on the right hand side of the road, you'll know there's less than 1k to the top. Fastest time up this side of the mountain is an astonishing 55 minutes and 51 seconds. That was set by Spain's Iban Mayo back in 2004 at a time trial stage of the Criterium de Dauphiné. A well-trained amateur would probably take something in the region of an hour and a half to get up to the summit, but me, as a rapidly detraining ex-professional, I've taken just over 2 hours.
In the last few hundred metres, you'll see some signs to Le Vendrun, a restaurant on your left-hand side. You take a sharp right-hand hairpin, and the road cranks up for one final burst to the summit, and then you've made it.
Well, I'm going to make no bones about it. That is a tough climb. But for amateurs and professionals alike, the sense of accomplishment you get as you do reach the top makes it one of the most memorable days that you can have on a bike.
Take the breakaway to get a big gap on this long flat path. After the feed zone in crest, the riders continue south towards the penultimate climb of the day, the Côte de